I have been playing video games for almost my entire life, so believe me when I say that I have played a lot of video games. So naturally, that includes online games. I have played pretty much any genre you can think of. MOBAs, MMOs, real-time strategy, shooters, car games, fighting games, racing games, tower defense, auto battlers, dungeon crawlers. So I have been around the block when it comes to gaming. So what I'm about to say, I say it with the utmost confidence, and that is that the Dead by Daylight community is the most entitled community of any game I have ever played. But I have to make something clear. I say the most entitled, not the most toxic. Don't get me wrong, Dead by Daylight is no stranger to toxicity and is still a pretty toxic community overall, but I'm not here to talk about its toxicity, I'm here to talk about their entitlement. But what do I mean with entitled exactly? I mean that everyone in this community likes to sit on their high horse trying to tell everyone how to play the freaking game, and if you don't play according to their imaginary rulebook, then you are the worst of the worst. You are the second coming of Hitler and you should be skinned alive to make up for a fraction of the sins you have committed. And the community as a whole is guilty of this. They can be a survivor main, a killer main, it doesn't matter. Survivors want the killer to hook one each, if any at all, while they loop you for 5 gens and teabag you at the exit gate before escaping and calling you a baby killer. And killers want to be unloopable gods and want the survivors to stand around dilly-dallying just waiting for their turn to die as if they were lambs to slaughter and get a 4K every single game. And if you don't comply to their wishes, if you so much deviate from this rulebook that they have for you and show any sign of actually trying to win against them, then you are a tunneler, a gen rusher, toxic, sweaty, or any other buzzword that they feel like making up. Basically, everyone wants to dictate how the other side, the enemy side, should treat them, despite the fact that the notion itself is the most asinine thing I have ever seen in an online environment. For them, just playing the game should be fun enough for you. If you try in any way or use any kind of strategy to beat them, they go, "Why are you trying so hard, bro? Are you a fucking tryhard dude? Are you not playing the game to have fun?" Okay, I'm going to say something that might be a bit of a hot take in this community. This may blow your mind, so listen closely, okay? Are you listening? Good. Did you know that most people don't find losing fun? I know, right? What a novel concept, but people in this community simply cannot wrap their minds around the idea that other people are going to do what they can to win, despite the fact that they are also playing with the hope that they win. And I can't even believe that I even have to explain this. You will think that DVD players have never played another online game in their lives with the way that they expect other people to play the game to conform to the imaginary rules that they want to impose on everyone else. Because I don't know if you guys have ever played any other game, but when you are playing a game that has opposing sides, naturally the other side is going to do anything in their power to win, and I can already picture the foam coming from out of the mouth of the typical DVD player at the notion of even suggesting that the other side can do whatever the heck they want. And as I said, a lot of the community is like this. Even a lot of the top and well-respected players love to try and say what are the right ways to play and what ways aren't. Just the other day, as an example, I was watching a YouTuber I really like and respect, and he was streaming Dead by Daylight, right? I'm not going to say who it was, but he was complaining and insulting the killer that was camping him, saying that it was such a loser thing to do, and said that don't you come to him with the excuse that the counter plays for his team to do gens and the killer only gets a 1k, because he said that he doesn't care that the schmucks of his teammates got out because he wasn't getting out. So let me get this straight, dude. You want the killer, the opposite side playing against you and that is trying to kill you all, to care about you getting a good game when you can't even be bothered to care about your own teammates having a good game? You can't make this shit up, man. The hypocrisy is astonishing. This is not a jab at survivors because, as I said, killers also like to complain for the stupidest things, like getting gen rush, for example. Like that is the objective of the survivors do, just like yours is killing as many of them as you can. An example like this are not a secluded case either. I have seen pretty much all the big streamers condemn certain tactics, from the killer focusing on taking out the weakest survivor quickly to make their job easier, to survivors getting into lockers, to force killers to eat their DS, despite the fact that those are logically smart moves that will be considered valid tactics in any other game. They are in the game, they are intended mechanics for the players to use to their advantage how they see fit. You don't get to dictate how a game should or shouldn't be played if the mechanics allow for those kinds of things to happen in the first place. And I bet that me just mentioning this will trigger a lot of players because the DVD community is enamored with trying to police how others play the game that they pay for. I'm not going to pretend that the game is not unbalanced, because it is. It has always been unbalanced and will continue to be so in the near future, because I could make an entire video of how much the clowns in charge of balancing this game have no idea of what the hell they are doing, but that is a video for another day. But as long as the mechanics in the game are like this, they are fair game to use by the players to their advantage, as broken as they may be. You are not the authority to dictate what our players are allowed to do with them. But I have to make something very clear. I'm not condoning cheating and being toxic. That is something that should be very obvious, but I feel I have to make this statement simply because I can already imagine some idiot trying to use a strawman argument saying, if we should do everything in our power to win, then you think cheating is okay? And of course cheating is not okay. You are using elements and resources from outside of the game to get an unfair advantage. And they are not part of the game. At that point, you aren't even playing the same game anymore. And to a second point, no, I'm not arguing in favor of being toxic either, but trying to beat your opponent truly is not being toxic, man. That's just how games are played. Man, I would love to see the average entitled DVD player try to play another online game and try to apply their flawed logic there. They will be made fun of until the cows come home. Could you imagine that? They will be playing League of Legends and go, oh my god, the enemy team took advantage of us being dead to grab Dragon for themselves? You were supposed to wait until we could try to dispute it. Why are you trying so hard? What fucking losers? Or they will be playing StarCraft and say, that guy scouted me and made an army full of units that counter mine? That toxic underhand douchebag, what a counterer! Or they will be playing Halo or Call of Duty, and when half their team disconnects, they will go into a tantrum when the enemy team doesn't go easy on them because it's not fair that the team DC and the enemy is not going easy on them. They must be sweaty neckbeards. It sounds like the dumbest shit ever, but that is legitimately how Dead by Daylight players are. And you might argue with me that those are competitive games and Dead by Daylight is just a casual party game, and for that I have two answers. One, this game is competitive. There is clearly a considerable high skill ceiling. Just the fact that you have to play for hundreds and sometimes even thousands of hours to be even remotely decent at the game should be enough telltale that the statement is not true. But also there's a lot of mechanical skill involved, from knowing how to loop effectively to mind gaming, among tons and tons of other things. Hell, there are even tournaments of DVD, so the argument that this game isn't competitive is completely moot. And my second answer is, okay, let's pretend for a moment that you are right. That DVD is just a casual party game with serious skill involved. And in that case I say, so what? Just because it's casual, does that mean that people shouldn't try to win? If you're playing Mario Party and you get an item to steal a star, do you go, I could nab myself a star from someone, but nah, I wouldn't want to be toxic and ruin the other guy's fun? Or do you play Uno and never ever use cards against your opponent? Of course not. This is why I laugh when people use the excuse that DVD is a party game and therefore is meant to be casual chill fun, when party games are some of the most cutthroat games out there. Mario Party is infamous for testing people's friendship since the N64 era, so get out of here with your party games are chill bullshit. I understand that getting your ass beaten in a game sucks, especially when the other side seems to pull the wind out of their ass, but that is the nature of games. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Just that sometimes you will dominate at the expense of others, sometimes you will also get claps from them. But no one has the obligation to play a certain way just because you don't think it's fun for you. But I have witnessed a lot of other gaming communities, and they can be pretty bad, outright horrendous even. But the absolute entitlement of the DVD community is unmatched. They are the great champions in that department. And as a quick example, let's look at another toxic community, League of Legends. Everyone knows that the League community is pretty bad. In fact, it's legendary for the toxicity. A lot of people that don't know jack shit about League at the very least know that the community is a cesspool of poison. And just like DVD players, League players love to never take the blame for their misplays. And just like DVD players, they have main character syndrome, in that they think that everything revolves around them, and if something goes by in a match, someone else has to be responsible because there is no way that they will be the cause. But even they usually blame their team, never the enemy team. Even League of Legends players, with all their selfishness, even they still have more common sense than the average DVD player to know that you cannot expect the opposing team to not do everything in their power to beat you. And that is not being toxic or sweaty or tryhard. They just how games are played. When you make the League players seem like the reasonable ones, you know you fucked up. In fact, do you know what the DVD community reminds me of? Do you know those bad casual players in other games? You know those. The casuals that don't want to learn how a certain game is played and just come and cry at the veterans of the game about how unfair the game is. Like those Age of Empires players that complain you don't wait 30 minutes to attack before they have everything set up, or the Yu-Gi-Oh players that complain about all the new summoning mechanics and that we should go back to summoning Blue Eyes and Summon Skull, or the guys that play fighting games and complain that a keep away character is spamming long range moves to keep them afar when that's how the character is played. And even if you're not familiar with the examples of the games I gave you, because it's not like I expect you to know of every single game, I can guarantee you that if you have ever been deeply involved in an online gaming community, you most likely have run into some form of these guys. And that is how day by day players feel, like the typical whiny casual player in most online games, but in this case it's an entire community. And I say bad casual players because there are good casual players that are not great at the game, but at the very least make an attempt to get better and try to adapt to how the game is played instead of trying to adapt the game to how they want it to be played. But that is how day by day players act. It feels as if you took all those bad players from all those communities and drop them in Dead by Daylight, where they are free to try and act holier than thou if you don't follow their made up rules. I am not saying that you have to take every match super competitive and stress over every little thing to the point of popping a vein, because at the end of the day you are also about the game, and if you don't want to take it seriously, go right ahead dude, knock yourself out. You are in your right to play that way, but what isn't your right is telling everyone else to do the same as you and only play the way that adapts to your tastes. And if you really play the game to just chill, then why do you get so riled up about what the other side does? If you weren't taking it as seriously as you claim you are, you will not care so much what they do. So by all means, if all you want is to chill and relax, do it. But don't come here crying if you lose to someone else that is trying harder than you are, because there is no obligation to be chill as well. And I think that's about it. I say my piece. If I continued, I would just be going around in circles, but in conclusion, stop trying to tell others how to play the game. I know that there are a lot of imbalanced shit in the game right now, and it's very easy to exploit for an advantage, and it sucks to be on the receiving end of them, but that is a problem with the balance itself. That's for the devs to try and fix, and until they get up their ass and actually address the things that are broken in the game, then the mechanics are here to be used. So just play the game however you want to play it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And remember, you are the one responsible for your own fun, no one else.